Hello guys, it's Revolution. So just in response to a question I seem to be asked every single video that I release, whether it's about the topic or not, is Dragon Ball Super returning, otherwise known by the fandom as Dragon Ball Super? What's happened to its return? Is its return dead? Wasn't it supposed to be returning in July? Will it be back before the end of 2019? These are a number of questions that are plaguing my comment section at the moment. First off, I just want to say I'm grateful that you guys trust me and you want to know what my thoughts are on this particular topic. I do make it a point in my videos to make sure I source everything I say, or if it is an opinion of mine, I'll let you guys know it is an opinion. And I believe this trust between us guys is a byproduct of that. But I steered away from this topic for quite a while now, and I'll give my reason for that. Upon Dragon Ball Super's conclusion in March 2018, yes guys, it's been over a year since Dragon Ball Super concluded. Sad times, I know. Since its conclusion, I've been pretty sure that Dragon Ball Super would return in the anime form. Of course, we had the Dragon Ball Super Broly movie, which is a continuation of the Dragon Ball Super story. But of course, with the movies, there's a lot of things that don't necessarily align to either the anime or the manga. I would even say the Dragon Ball Super Broly movie is more aligned to the manga of Dragon Ball Super than the anime. Of course, the movie itself is in animation form. But I've been pretty sure that Dragon Ball Super would return. The stars seem to be aligned for its return, and I'll get into that in just a moment. But it just doesn't seem to be returning. There's been no announcement of its return by any official sources. And quite frankly, I'm out of guesses in terms of guessing when this may return. I mean, I could make some projections of when it might return, but I'm simply not sure. I just don't know. My original prediction was that they would announce it at Jump Festa 19, just as they revealed the Dragon Ball Super Broly movie at Jump Festa 18. Of course, we didn't know it was the Broly movie at that time. We just knew they were making a Dragon Ball Super movie. Of course, that did not transpire. There was no announcement of a new Dragon Ball Super anime series. Toriyama did mention that he's working on new works. A lot of people took that to be the manga, but it seems that the continuation of the Dragon Ball Super manga, Toyotaro's involvement in that story or the narrative is becoming bigger and bigger, and Toriyama's involvement in that story is becoming less and less. We don't know if Toriyama's new works, we're talking about the Dragon Ball Kakarot game scheduled to come out in the near future, because as we know that Toriyama said that there's going to be a lot of details in that game written by him that we didn't know about in the lore of Dragon Ball before. I'm exceptionally excited about that game because for me, one of the big draws of Dragon Ball as a franchise is the lore of Dragon Ball and the expanded verse. Or was he talking about the new Dragon Ball Super movie that we now know is going to come out at some point? Of course, we have no dates or any official information on what the movie is going to be about. We know that it's at extremely early stages. Toei had no problem letting that be announced. My second guess was that it could return at the end of April in 2019, based on the fact that GGG no Kataro's scheduled run was due to end at the end of April, and upon doing a bit of research, I found that Kataro's ratings weren't even as good as Super's ratings at its worst. I want to give a shout out to Totally Not Mark, who recently did a video about Dragon Ball Super's ratings, and you'll find that Dragon Ball Super's ratings heavily declined throughout the show's run, really declining in the Tournament of Power. But one thing he did exceptionally well in that video was talk about other things than just the TV ratings, and really gave a great insight on how to evaluate how popular a show is in the modern times. Despite Dragon Ball Super's declining TV ratings, of course, we saw how successful the Dragon Ball Super Broly movie was, smashing all records of previous Dragon Ball movies casually. Reports have shown that Dragon Ball Super Broly has made approximately $125 million worldwide, whereas the previous Dragon Ball Renaissance movies, Battle of Gods and Resurrection of F, did $51 million and $65 million respectively. Essentially, Dragon Ball Super Broly beat both of them put together. Factor in the success of the Dragon Ball Xenoverse games and the Dragon Ball FighterZ games, as well as the mobile games Dragon Ball Dokkan Battle and Dragon Ball Legends, and then we're even getting a new game post Dragon Ball Super, Dragon Ball Kakarot. The interest in the franchise is exceedingly high. No matter what your thoughts are on the Dragon Ball Super anime, whether you thought it was good, bad, trash as most people like to use, I maintain that Dragon Ball Super was a good show with lots of flaws. However, those flaws weren't just exclusive to Dragon Ball Super. Those flaws have existed throughout the entire series of Dragon Ball. Regardless of what your thoughts are on the show though, the interest is high. There's still a lot of people willing to pay money for the product of Dragon Ball Super. Even according to Bandai Namco's sales, Dragon Ball is smashing the competition. Its 2019 yearly forecasts beat not just One Piece, a series that regularly beats Dragon Ball Super in the TV ratings in Japan, but it beats One Piece and its biggest toy seller outside of Dragon Ball, Mobile Suit Gundam, together. Dragon Ball was forecasted to make 120 billion yen. Mobile Suit Gundam and One Piece combined was only forecasted to make 108 billion yen. Of course, the Dragon Ball Super Broly movie may have played a big part in that, but the forecast for 2020 continue in a similar vein. The projections for 2020 are 115 billion yen, still smashing the competition, but interestingly, in these forecasts for sales projections, it's the second half of the year where Dragon Ball will make a lot of money. That could be telling. Of course, there'll be the Dragon Ball Z Kakarot game, but essentially, unless they really rush through the production of the second Dragon Ball Super movie, I highly doubt it'll be out in 2020. I believe 2021 is a more reasonable year for the next movie to come out. Given what we know, given that as per the announcement of this upcoming movie, they were only at the initial stages basically putting together ideas for that movie. But it goes without saying, the forecast for Dragon Ball's revenue is not slowing down. But wasn't it supposed to be coming back in July? Obviously, some other members of the Dragon Ball YouTube community did project that it would come back in July. They didn't say it was confirmed to be coming back in July, but they projected based on research. A lot of people have made accusations on these people being liars. In terms of Geekdom 101, I do not believe he's lying. I think his body of work speaks for itself. Of course, there's been reports that the animators that were working on Dragon Ball Super Broly have gone to work on One Piece Stampede because it was behind schedule. That movie is slated to come out early August, which would free those animators to work on Dragon Ball Super's return again, which, who knows, means we could have a return January or April of 2020. I find the October of 2019 date becoming increasingly unlikely because as of now they'd only have 2 months to promote this show coming out. I guess if there's one show that could do with a short span of promotion, it is Dragon Ball, but I'm sure they'd want to give it the maximum exposure they could before it eventually drops for its second run. The truth about Dragon Ball Super's return is no matter how much YouTubers like me speculate, like I said, I've got it wrong twice, and I can only really make projections based off guesses, sometimes well-researched guesses, but they are essentially guesses and predictions because I don't work for Toei. And quite frankly, Toei, Shueisha and Toriyama are quite essentially the daddies in this situation. So on a personal note, I will always take the official word above anybody, and as far as the official word goes, there is no Dragon Ball Super anime continuation, but there is going to be another Dragon Ball Super movie. Of course, we can continue to speculate. I do inside believe that there will be a new anime coming, and I'm really hoping all the news that they are working on it is right, because I would rather have a Dragon Ball Super anime than a Dragon Ball Super movie, quite frankly. Though both in tandem would be even better, I'm sure you agree. But just before I close out this video, I do want to bring attention back to the interview by Toei executives in Barcelona in 2017, a few months before they revealed the Dragon Ball Super Broly movie at Jump Festa 18. Whilst not a direct confirmation, this might be the most official indirect confirmation that they will continue the series from Toei employees. You can find the translation on Konsenshu.com, and here's what the show producers had to say. Production team discusses previous ventures and what factors are involved in deciding whether a series continues on. Ratings and merchandise sales are important factors in whether sponsors continue to support a show. So long as those remain healthy, there is no issue with continuing. Dragon Ball Kai is cited as an example where ratings were fine, but merchandise was not selling. After all, the material was limited to the original series, which was already available and had been selling well for decades. Of course, we know the merchandise for Dragon Ball Super is breaking its limits, I guess you could say. Dragon Ball Super's ratings were okay, but like I said, check out Totally Mark's video on this subject because you have to take into account in the modern age streaming, etc. And Dragon Ball Super had streaming sites breaking down. So this is what led me to believe it could potentially return after Kitaro, considering that Kitaro's ratings weren't quite as high as Super's, as well as the fact that it sells nowhere near as much merchandise as Dragon Ball. Nothing does. Whilst I thought that was an educated guess at the time, of course it didn't transpire. Kitaro got renewed. They also mention how Toyotaro's involvement has also recently extended to some supporting characters. Like I've said many times, Toyotaro's involvement in the Universal Survival arc was pretty heavy, and it's become even more heavy in the Moro arc. But asked whether the Super story will link up with the original ending to the Dragon Ball Z ending, they said Toriyama has not yet decided how it's going to end. This was only a few months before the movie was announced, during the early stages of the Universal Survival arc. Of course, he may have changed his mind from that point, but as we've seen with the Dragon Ball Super Broly movie, it doesn't really close any story threads. In fact, it opens more of them. They were then asked if Dragon Ball GT or something of that like, where they make their own Dragon Ball continuation, was an option, and they literally responded by saying Toriyama was nowhere near his limits in terms of the larger Dragon Ball story. Toriyama is nowhere near his limits. The story is far from done. I don't believe he finished those limits with the Dragon Ball Super Broly arc. Like I said, he pretty much opened more potential story threads. Of course, Toyotaro has continued from that in the Dragon Ball Super manga. Toei could do their own thing and continue it. Maybe they could even adapt Toyotaro's manga. Toriyama is still involved after all, which I'm hoping is the route they're taking, because I'm really enjoying the Moro arc at the moment. Like suggested in the interview in Barcelona, if the series still has a writer who wants to continue writing stories and producing further stories and it's still making money, Toei will always adapt it eventually. For me, Dragon Ball Super's initial run felt like a part 1, like a first act, in terms of how it expanded the Dragon Ball universe to a multiverse, introduced a whole host of new characters with open story threads. Goku's story feels far from concluded. So taking all these things into account, I find it hard to believe that they haven't already been working on a new Dragon Ball series. And whilst I believe they potentially have been, whether that just be initial meetings, scripting, storyboarding, animation, and it absolutely wouldn't surprise me if an announcement came out in the short future. Who knows, maybe it could come out an hour after I've dropped this video. Like I said, I'd be baffled if they haven't already started work on it, but I've given up trying to second guess Toei. Me sitting here right now telling you yes, it is coming back and it's coming back in the near future is just an appeal to probability. Because at the moment, I quite frankly just don't know what Toei are doing in regards to the Dragon Ball Super franchise. But the official mainstream word is, according to them, they are not working at it at this point, but they are working on a movie. And quite frankly, with them being the daddies, that is the truth about Dragon Ball Super's return. I can sit here and pretend to be an in the know, but I'll always keep it 100 with you guys. Let me know what you think, guys, down in the comments section. I look forward to reading what you guys have got to say. Would you like them to retell the Broly and Moro arcs in a Dragon Ball 2-part anime series? Let me know. Keep smashing that like button. Keep lending the Daishinken your energy. Until next time, Ad Astra.